For those of you that don't know, I was the blogger that Ben referenced to that corrected him on Rule 38. But even in his revised video where he refers to me, there's a couple of things that he even got wrong in that news broadcast. Now, we've had some email correspondence back and forth. I tried to explain things to him thoroughly. He has not followed up with it. Why, I don't know. So hopefully I can clear this up for some of you tonight. I'm going to keep going, Tracy?
Excuse me. Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
The dynamics of Rule 38, okay, are much bigger than what Ben told you. You only got half of the story. And what I referenced to in some of the teachings that I've been doing over at ronpaultribune.com is to give you a better understanding of the dynamics of what your bylaws actually state. Now, while the RNC does not recognize a state to bind its delegates in certain manners, and we'll get to the details of that in a minute, the states absolutely can recognize their ability to bind delegates during the RNC convention. Now, some of you are going to say, well, what do I mean by that? The RNC may not recognize it, okay, but the RNC is above the states. But the RNC does not dictate what type of penalty or consequence a state could pose on a delegate should they break state party rule in the bylaws and vote their conscience. So my purpose here is to give everybody the information that they need so they can make an intelligent decision and make the right decision.
Steve, I'm going to interject for just 1 second. Brenda's down there, and she seems to be very informed, and she's sharing some information with us. I just want to interject and say, Brenda, he's not saying the RNC is telling you that that you can't vote your conscience down in Tampa. What he's saying is that if you're a bound delegate and you're from a certain state and you go down and you vote your conscience in Tampa, your state may have penalties for you doing such, which could include a fine. It could include what other penalties are generally assessed for people that go that route, Steve?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different things that can happen. In some cases, there could be nothing. In other cases, it could be monetary fines. We've spoken to a couple people over the last week and a half. One particular person said their bylaw stated it was a $200 fine. Somebody else claimed it was $1,000. I don't know what's out there because I can't possibly know what's in everybody's bylaws. But the worst things that can happen to delegates is they could be stripped of their delegate credentials on the RNC floor and replaced with an alternate, or even worse, they could be removed by the Republican Party and banned for life and never be able to join again. So it's important to understand what's in, number one, your district and county bylaws and your state bylaws, because they all work in conjunction, folks. Now, I understand Brenda's point. The RNC is the overall body. But what she doesn't understand is that even though they may not recognize certain things, the states absolutely do. It's kind of like the Constitution where, the federal government has a certain role, but the states actually have rights to do certain things. So I just want the delegates to be informed on what those consequences should be so they just don't go in blindly and make a wrong decision. And the reason that I say this is, what is the long-term goal should, hypothetically, Ron Paul not receive 1,144 delegates and become president? Now, I've used this example many times. I use Nevada. The people in Nevada have taken over essentially the entire state Republican Party in Nevada. Mm-hmm. They control it. They have the officer and chair positions. They therefore control the state. So if they went in blindly and voted based on a Rule 38 or saying I can vote my conscience because of an opinion of an RNC attorney, mm-hmm, without understanding what the consequences could be should they break state party bylaws and vote their conscience, all of that work that they've done over the past 5 years could be for nothing. Now, I'm not telling anybody how to vote. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not even telling you to listen to me. What I'm telling you is that you should confirm every single thing that I tell you. It's right there in black and white to read. You can find it for yourself. Don't take someone's word for it blindly until you confirm it for yourself. Because if you do, you're going to leave yourselves wide open for either consequences or disappointment. And that's what I don't want to happen.
Okay, so let's, just so everyone knows who you are, there are some people that don't know exactly who you are. You pretty much brought this whole concept of the delegates up back in 2008. And, we piggybacked off this strategy that you were out there screaming about, and we're using it to our advantage now. So just a bit of history about yourself before we move forward.
Yeah, well, back in 2008, it was actually after Super Tuesday when Ron Paul lost a bunch of states and everybody was down in the dumps and said, I can't win. I went on the Daily Paul and I posted a pretty long, detailed synopsis, so to speak, of how someone can become the nominee. Now, you can probably find that post there. I believe I titled it, "We Can Win." And what I explained about was that the primary vote is really nothing but a straw poll. That the delegates actually decide who becomes the nominee in the Republican Party. It picked up a little bit of steam, and people were really unprepared. I taught parliamentary and procedure classes on Robert's Rules of Order for about 6 months straight. I mean, I literally had meetup groups having their entire meetup on a conference call and recording it to try to guide them through this. But every kind of prepared, and I understand, Robert's Rules of Order is over 700 pages long. It took me 5 years to really grasp and understand, even as a parliamentarian, some of the dynamics of Robert's Rules of Order. So I'm not blaming everybody for not doing it, but here's what I found this time around. We have made leaps and bounds compared to 4 years ago. Look at Nevada as a prime example. We control the Republican Party in the state of Nevada. Now, some people will say, well, how important is that the Republican Party is corrupt? Well, they're corrupt if the people in charge are corrupt. But if the people in charge are not corrupt and are going to do things the right way, you actually can make progress. Now, some people have said, well, what can they really do? They really can't do anything. That's absolutely not true. If any of you remember, in Utah in the last election, a incumbent senator was running for re-election. And what happened was the Republican Party in Utah and the delegates declined to even allow him to run on the ballot in their state Republican. Now, I believe he ended up running as an independent, and I don't know what happened as the end result, but they literally removed him from running on their ballot. That's the kind of power that we could have at a local level. This is what Ron Paul's been trying to teach all of you. This is why he pushed for recent committee people. He wants you involved at the local level for a simple reason. It's much easier to control things at a local level than a national level. And this is why everybody has got to be involved. It's extremely important that we show up to the rest of these conventions, that we elect our delegates, that we understand rules of order, and that we at least have a fighting chance at the convention in Tampa. And I'll break there for you, Tracy, if you need me to.
Thanks. I have actually two points, one of which is that actually, as I said in the beginning, Steve's been giving these, lessons on how to follow Robert's Rules of Order for us for a long time now. People are picking up on it really quickly. It's fun. We do it all the time over at Ron Paul Tribune. That's 24 hours, and everyone just gets in there and talks and does things. But we vote on, what song we're going to play or how we're going to, we elect a chairman every night, and it actually is really fun. And then we adjourn so we can just BS. But my second thing is, really quickly before I start taking questions, I have about 15 minutes for questions for you. What do you think, and I know you can't be sure about this, but what's your opinion on our success down in Tampa?
On our what, Tracy? You broke up a little bit.
I'm sorry, on what our success will be in Tampa.
Well, it depends. We have a lot of conventions left to go. There are several states that haven't even voted yet. If we continue the way that we're doing, okay, if you look at, Nevada and Maine, and what's going on in Iowa and Idaho and Colorado and Minnesota and Louisiana. I mean, we're making severe headway. If this trend continues, we have a really significant chance to be, at the very minimum, be a force in Tampa, if not win the nomination completely. And that really is the end goal.
And that's not out of the question.
No, it's not. Because again, the delegates decide who becomes the nominee. You know, this is why I'm encouraging people to look at their bylaws to determine what they can and can't do and not be removed from the floor potentially and replaced with an alternate that may not be a Ron Paul supporting delegate. This is why all of this is important.
All right, I'm going to start taking some questions right now. If anybody has a question for Steve about process, about what you can do in your state, or anything like that, you can feel free to type that question down. Otherwise, I will let him continue. He has a bunch to say, and he's very smart. I think I am very interested in knowing how one becomes a parliamentarian in the first place.
Well, if you actually go to NAP, which is the National Association of Parliamentarians, they teach this stuff all over the country. So you can actually, you might be able to find something near you. You basically go there and you pay them and you take their classes and you become a certified parliamentarian. I would actually recommend that everybody do it if they can, if they're going to be involved in local politics and conventions. It's the most powerful tool that we have to be effective and make significant change on the local level.
Okay, two questions. Does the establishment GOP have legal authority over delegates?
You talking about locally or nationally?
Chris, you can type back. Locally.
Okay. The local GOP only has control over delegates as to what is stated in the bylaws in that district and state. You know, bylaws are put there for a reason. It's so that we actually have some type of order and that people will abide by what's there. This is why I've encouraged people to look at two things based on their district and their state bylaws. Okay, number one, I'll get to that in a second, Chris. Number one, I want you to look at what the potential consequence could be should you break district or state party rules based on your bylaws. I also want you to look at what the consequence should be should you abstain on one ballot or multiple ballots. Now, I haven't seen anything that disallows you from abstaining except in, I believe, Alaska and California. Now, I haven't looked at all of the bylaws, possibly read through every single district and county and state bylaw around the country. This is where you have to come in and understand what you can and cannot do.